So good morning to everyone, or good day, depends on where you are and when you are listening to us. It's a great privilege to continue with the topics which are combining, mixing leadership and Estonian history and our lessons learned from the past, or lessons identified, depends on how we approach this topic. What it will be today, Remo?
So, as far as I understood, you know it better. What's the topic? So tell me.
Okay, let's do a read back about it. So the initial idea was, and I hope that we still stick to this initial plan because situation has not changed so much. We will talk about hard decisions in beginning of restoration of Estonian independence. So 1992, and maybe the first years of restored independence. So the Mart Laar's first government, 30 years, oh my God, 30 years already has passed. And what has been the lessons identified? Has been the lessons learned? That will be the topic. And both of us has read something and also watched one interesting movie, documentary movie, and probably both of us have had some thoughts to share with other people about it.
Yep. So yeah, I like the movie. It's called Rodeo. I don't know if there is any English subtitles to it. If someone really needs it, we will figure it out how to make that happen. Most likely there is, I think, because it's such a great movie. But yeah, the movie talks about our independence, and I think it paints a really great picture of decision making, mistakes made, and how crazy it was. And to me, what it kind of reminded is just world of business or doing a startup. So maybe could you give us a little bit of an overview of how it went down and what were the main kind of things that happened in that period?
Now, I do remember this period as a 15-year-old guy, so definitely not so much practical experience about every aspect from this movie. But 1991, Estonia restored independence, and now 1992, like the first so-called adult life year come. You have to make your own decisions. You have the first parliamentary elections, and you have a first government, the real government, which is definitely have a lot of young, angry men who have a lot of enthusiasm, default aggressive, but probably maybe not so much experience in the politics. And 32-year-old prime minister, 26-year-old minister of defense, etc., that's the symbols of this period. We still had a Soviet ruble, which was falling down. It was like a free fall. Inflation was huge. Financial system was on the edge of collapse. And now you decide to go and change to the Estonian own currency, because you have read some books that, hey, in Germany after the World War II, they did something. It was a miracle. Let's try the same 50 years later or 40 years later. And it took definitely a lot of courage. And we can't forget that we still had occupation forces on our soil. Russian army has not left. In 1992, we still had 2 more years to go with them. So political situation unstable, economy definitely, as I mentioned, on the edge of collapse, and now you have to choose between hard and even harder decisions. And the first enthusiasm after 91, after restoration of independence, is going away, because now you have like this routine which you have to deal. And this movie, for me, it was very interesting to look now as a combat-ready instructor from the point of view, if I have a short time, if the time is my first limitations, what kind of decisions I can make. And I cannot forget, I cannot blame anymore, I cannot blame others, because now it's my decision. It's not anymore the Moscow decision, it's not anymore someone else's fault, it's on me. So from this point of view, this movie and of course the Mart Laar book, I really enjoyed it.
So as I'm hearing this, so like there's two paths I would like to like maybe go and try. So one would be that I have few questions to clarify for myself, like some of the things that you said, and then maybe I don't know if we are able to pull it off, but then go decision by decision and just talk about those decisions and see what we think about them and how, like let's see where that leads to. But the first two questions, or the first question is, what do you think? Like you said that there was no experience in politics, like, and that got me to thinking, like, so what was before 91? I mean, those guys just didn't become politicians overnight, or they're still part of the government. So how was it in the Soviet time? And what then changed like overnight after they got independent? Do you have any understanding of what was the system before?
I do have some understanding, again, based on the materials from this year and my personal experience as a teenager observing this. What I have, maybe as a remark, seems to me that at this time, being the teenagers were actually very much interested in this politics, maybe because it was so turbulent time and it was so interesting to see and hear the discussions at home and etc.
It could also be that you were just a weird kid who were interested in it.
Maybe, I don't know. But you are right. Definitely those people like Mart Laar and many others, they are not just became politicians overnight, like you said. The period of transformation started in late 80s, all the singing revolution, National Front, Estonian Citizens Committee, and Mart Laar in his late 20s and beginning of 30s, his early 30s, was already like a self-developed politician in this field. So he had certain political movement experience, but running a country, that was definitely something new. And so enthusiasm was there. Understanding of vision where we should go was definitely there. But what happened overnight that you had to make decisions which are not anymore like based on a popular movements, but those decisions are affecting you as a leader of sovereign country. And that's, I suppose, again, I don't have personal experience, but I suppose that is a game changer. Now you're sitting together with the leaders of other European nations and you're saying, hey, my first priority is, for example, to get Russian troops out of my country. My second priority, how to overlive the first winter. Because the winter of 92, where actually we had almost like a no oil to heat even our residential areas in Tallinn, or we don't have enough gasoline to run trucks and everything, transportation. That was definitely a hard decision. Our money came to its end, so it was even a question how we will going to pay social benefits and pensions. So these decisions are definitely different from the national emotional movements in late 80s. Now you had to deal with the everyday unpleasant and very hard decisions.
So in 80s, would you say that they didn't have to do much of decisions at all? Because I mean it was run by Communist Party, no?
Yes, or decisions actually you could make, they were more of that we want to achieve something on emotional level. We want to restore, we want to find emotional and political support from other nations around the globe. But these hard economical decisions, you didn't have so much power, so much influence to somehow influence them, those decisions I mean. So that was definitely different. So this, it could be very hard, but it was not very routine. You didn't have to deal like, you're very much right, I suppose, comparing it to the startup business. You start with a very excellent idea, you have some wow effect, and then this reality knocks on the door. Say, hey, okay, very nice, now you establish a startup. What is your business plan? How are you going to communicate with the tax department? Where you will employ your people? How are you going to deal with safety regulations, etc., etc., etc. So after the first wow effect, enthusiasm, you have to deal with routine. And many people actually give up, not because they don't have idea, but consistency. How I'm going to stick with my plan.
So in terms of having no experience, to me it sounds actually that it could be an actually good thing, because then you don't know, like if you were like a career politician, I don't know if those dudes would even do those kind of moves.
No, you couldn't take this risk, because even if we think about the monetary reform in June 1992, there were several important international organizations, institutions who said, be careful, don't take this risk, you are not ready yet, have you calculated all the aspects? But those guys said, yes, we have calculated, but if we will not do it now, we probably will lose momentum. And they took a risk, and we have to say that even the first year was very hard, but it still took us out of this hole. Okay, lead it to another example, which I hope we will have time to discuss today, this so-called ruble affair, where we managed to do something with this exchanged Soviet worthless money. But it definitely, if you would have like a very long experience and you are been into the politics for decades, you would be more cautious, I suppose. So I agree that the thing that didn't have very deep knowledge or deep practical experience with the Soviet time politics, I think it actually in this situation worked as a benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems to me as well. Like, and also like if you don't know, like because you're not thinking so much about your career, you are just thinking about that situation that, hey, we need to fix this, and that's what you're thinking about. You don't think about you, because they didn't seem to be thinking about themselves at all. They were just, all right, that's what our country needs, that's what we need to do, and now we will make decisions which will support the country. It doesn't matter what happens with us, we will take the risk. And that's what I saw in that movie as well, which was interesting to me. So then you said also that they got this idea from Germany after the Second World War. So what did Germans do after the Second World War?
Germany after Second World War was definitely in ruins. No economy, more than 8 million people killed, significant part of your male population is gone. And now you have to make some decision how to rebuild it. And the only decision was to start from the zero, skipping the political side, economical situation. Hey, we will establish a new strong currency, but it doesn't count anymore what you had before. So everyone starts from the same position. And we will sell as much as possible to those people who want to start the investments, who want to start build up industry and economy. And the exchange, this Deutschmark, actually the German currency, which came from the beginning, it was very stable. Even people didn't have much, but you knew that every hard work you do and even the little money you get, you know this money is worth a lot. And that Estonian government also did since the beginning. 1 German mark, it's 8 Estonian crowns. Boom. And we will not issue more money than we are able to guarantee. So it's not just a paper, it's really worth something. And Estonian money became very stable from the beginning because it was connected to one of the world's strongest economies.
How do you connect that? Like, do you have a gold, or like have to have some sort of a, I don't know, pile of value? Like, how do you create the currency?
You have to have a pile of value. You are right. So you have two options. Either you connect it to the gold, but the gold standard after the World War II was not so common anymore. But you are not issuing more that you are able to guarantee that you can buy or exchange 1 to 8 with the German mark. So you have to have your funds, reserve funds in different banks around the world. You have to have different assets. So every piece of paper, which is called a banknote, is guaranteed by a certain amount of money. It was a very hard decision because from the populistic point of view, it would have been much easier. Hey, we have a low salaries, we have low pensions, let's print more money. And for the short period, people feel, whoa, I have more. even the inflation will eat it. And the Estonian government took huge risk not to follow this populistic path, but say, hey, it will be hard in the beginning. I still remember that everyone could exchange 1,500 rubles, which meant you got 150 crowns, everyone, on the next morning, which is today 10 euros. That was your start. Every member of family got 10 euros.
But
and go.
Like I think I don't understand it fully. Like, okay, so let's say we are now Estonia. We want to have our own money. And like, I will say that, hey, for $1, we get, I don't know, 3 crowns. Based on what is that the ratio?
The ratio was calculated what Estonian financial situation could provide at this moment. What is our GDP was at this moment? What kind of reserves we had? So we had something, of course, but we had to calculate very carefully what can we guarantee, because most of our economy was related to the Soviet Union, connected to the Soviet Union before that. So big industries like Dvigatel, Kalinin, whatever big factories which produced something to somewhere, the market was gone. Our industry production was not qualified and not with a good quality enough to sell it to the Western partners. So we had very few to guarantee. Yes, we got back certain of our funds which were stored in the Western countries during the occupation. But then we had to look, okay, that's all we got. Now, if we want to issue our own currency, how much we can provide? And we calculated, Estonian government calculated very carefully, that's what we can guarantee, not more. And that was the first start. And on one hand, it also gave possibility for the business people from more developed countries to come to our market and, yes, starting to buy piece by piece, maybe certain factories, certain investments, to build it up. It was a very controversial topic, and it was a lot of discussion. Hey, we are selling our country to foreigners. But on the other hand, it was the only possibility to bring the investments. It was, again, very dichotomy. Am I selling away what I have, or I'm bringing other people in? How I'm going to create the first circle of our own business entrepreneurs? Now, 30 years later, we have to say that luckily we have been pretty successful taking this risk. Not ideal, not perfect, but quite successful. But in 92, it was not possible to predict. It was a risk.
Yeah, never understand what's the actual thing, what will happen, right?
Yeah, but the other option would have, of course, to be and sit and wait. What will happen? Wait for 5 years, wait for 10 years, and when we look on some nations from the former Soviet Union who didn't have the same courage at the same time, like Moldova, for example, some other people, now they are struggling with the same things, but 30 years later. So unfortunately, you have lost time of one generation. Sometimes taking a risk, taking a small steps, like we say, put the ball rolling, start to move, adjust. I think this worked. So definitely default aggressive was a part of this decision. And prioritize and execute, I think this law of combat also worked in this situation very well.
So what do you think, what were considered? Like, how did the planning process, or like, how do you think those decisions at that time were made? Because I don't assume that they had any military training. So as I understand now, the decision making, there could be a process, you have a checklist, you understand what to consider, what questions do you ask, like what ifs, contingency planning, what will happen with us, what are some of the consequences that happen, what's the impact of the mission, what's the actual value, how much time do we have, like there's a lot of things to consider. And so what do you think, how were those decisions made? Or what did actually those discussions about which decision we make, what those discussions look like? What do you think?
I had a privilege to talk with some people who were actually part of those decisions at this time, and all the things you actually mentioned are correct. Yes, most of them probably had Soviet military training or Soviet reserve officer training, which was mandatory if you studied at the university. So I don't know how much Soviet military actually used this planning process. I really doubt. I don't think. But definitely the priorities put on list with a time. So there was 2 political priorities for Estonia at this time. To be connected as soon as possible with the European economical institutions, plus military guarantees or security guarantees. That was like 2 political goals. Everything else comes later. So European Union and connection to NATO, boom, that comes first. The understanding of time, it was also mentioned in this movie and in several other books, and also by the memories of first President Lennart Meri, that we have a window of opportunity, but it will be open for a very, very short time. So that was definitely in place, our 2 priorities. Now, third priority, it was to get as soon as possible out of the Russian influence in economy. So the fastest way to get out, you get out of the financial zone, you get out of the ruble zone. So that was why Estonia was so keen, so oriented on, hey, we need to have our own currency as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will lose the time and we will be sticking to this economical zone. That's why less than a year after restoring independence, which is a miracle, Estonia already get the new money, the own currency. Because the idea why it was used was exactly to get you financially out. Because if you are out, you can still rely on someone else, but you don't have to be related anymore to the Soviet ruble zone. Contingency. Here I don't have an answer. I don't know how much the contingency was actually calculated or everything was put on one card. I don't know. I think that the proportion of the risk or risk behavior here was pretty high. But I think that when we teach that 10% is the theory, 25 is a demonstration, and 65 is practice, in this situation, 10% of theory was very, very important, because the Milton Friedman and this German experience with the money reform, theoretical experience in 1949, that was 2 basic theoretical elements which were taken for the example. So a lot in this money or financial reform was actually taken from the theoretical materials. We didn't have a time and didn't have possibility to have practically exercised. So in this case, reading into this theoretical material was very, very important, especially Milton Friedman, who is like a main brain of all this very harsh money reform, very, very clear cuts.
So what was the theory? Do you know anything?
The theory is basically, it says, give people as much as possible financial freedom and make the state influence as less as possible. For example, flat
free
tax
capital.
rate. Free capital as much as possible.
Free
Wild East at this time. Yeah, so he's definitely a preacher of a free market. Maybe from certain point in a very extreme way, but actually Estonia took a risk. Hey, for example, most of the developed countries are using very complex tax system. If you earn more than something, then you have a higher tax rate, and then you have a lot of exemptions and inclusions and exclusions, etc. Estonia said, wait a minute, we have to do it simple. If you earn money, boom, certain percentage, if I'm not wrong, at this time it was 26%, that is a one tax, but that's tax for everyone. It doesn't matter. You earn more, you have 26, you have less, 26, but everyone giving their own share. It was very simple, very much criticized, but that made a simplicity. You didn't need to create a lot of bureaucracy to control this tax system. And it's miracle that we still have it, 90%, we still have the same system today, 30 years later. That was a very bold decision. Simplicity. So definitely all the plans were in some way cruel, but they were very simple. They were very, very simple. Everyone could do a readback.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we say. best plan is simple, where everyone understands. And if you have those priorities listed
very
out,
simple.
It's easy to make decisions.
And then I think a very important political decision or political orientation, the third one, which also affected us from the economical point of view, was to get out, the Russian troops to get out from our soil. Because who wants to invest into a country if you still have presence of unstable neighbor on your territory? Not so many people, especially if you're coming a little bit from a longer distance. Yes, of course, our Finnish and Swedish partners probably knew us better, but if you are the French entrepreneur or the German one and you look on the map, say, hey, wait a minute, why should I do it? So this political decision was also very, very important, and I think that is one of the biggest successes Estonia has faced. And again, the plan was very simple. We need to make Americans being interested that the Soviet or now Russian troops will move out on the same period, during the same period when they are moving out from the Eastern Europe, from the East Germany. Let's jump on the board. We managed to build, I don't know how actually. I read a lot of books and I still can't understand how we managed to be so successful building relations that all the US government, doesn't matter, Democrats or Republicans, supported this idea and even were ready to invest financially into this idea. But
Most
with the support of President...
They were also like forward-looking and also seeing like it will be strategically important area. There is a country, like it doesn't require too much investment. Let's speak out, let's let them do. It's not a big investment for them in general. Like looking at how big is the country. And obviously we are kind of we have a common enemy. So that's the support.
But don't forget at this time, it was very hard to clearly state that Russia is the enemy, because the whole world was little bit, like we say in Estonian language, wearing the pink glasses. And hey, the history is over, the Cold War is over, we will live happily ever after. All the NATO countries were starting immediately after 92, reducing their military budgets, cuts in the budget, decreasing, because hey, this huge, big, dangerous Soviet bear is disappeared. And for the small Estonia, who was actually realizing, wait a minute, it's only temporary, it was very hard to sell your story, to tell your story. And I think that was one of the biggest successes of Estonian diplomacy. We managed to adapt. Estonia took a very strategically important approach, or wise approach. We are talking first about connecting us to the European economical circles. What can be against it if we want to be economically developed, following the rule of law, being non-corrupt country, etc., etc. And now when you're already economically connected to the European Union, hey, we want to jump now on this NATO train as well. So that was very wise, but we always kept this strategic vision in mind. So again, it was adapting. If Estonia from 92 would start immediately to talk, hey, we have only one common enemy in the East, I think many of our partners wouldn't listen. So innovate and adapt.
We were smart at sales and how to market our country and how to market the free capital to Americans. That's what they love. So smart moves done. And to me, it sounds like farmers or simple guys came together. And that's not a bad thing at all. Like practical, because working in a farm, it's practical. Hey, we have a broken tractor, let's repair it. We don't have a new tire. All right, we will fix the old one. Because they have shit they need to get done. They don't have time to figure out whatever, because the crops will go out, the animals will die, So they have to adapt. They have to be very creative in that sense. And it's not related with how much resources you have, because if you don't, then you have to figure out how to cultivate your farmland or whatever. So if those guys come together, so they are problem solvers by nature. It's just, okay, we haven't done it, but the crops will go out if you don't do anything. So let's better start doing something and let's see what happens. So, and then what do you do? If you don't overthink, if you don't have the overall necessity in the bureaucracy and blah, 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 all the kind of stuff, obviously those things have place and the reason eventually, because the more further you get in the government, then the other extreme you go, because everything will be regulated, everything will be, initially there's no rules. Like in the beginning of every startup, you have that kind of situation because there is no rules. There is only a vision of one guy or two guys who will start executing based on what they think should be done. Now they are most likely a great salesman, great marketer, great visionary, and they wouldn't be able to oil a long corporate machine in the same way as they create ideas and make things happen and put the ball rolling, so to say. So to me, those simple dudes who came together and saw that there is a problem, hey, here are 3 options that we could do. Hey, which one you think is the most reasonable? Hey, this doesn't seem logical. They understand where they didn't want to go, which is a really good help. Like you have a possibility to at least understand this is not what we want for sure. So what's the opposite of that? And that's already really good guidance of what to do. It gives you a pretty good intent and like direction. And then you just start going and see what happens. And I think it was a total like benefit of having those young kind of guys who just wanted to make decisions. I think, and then that's the dichotomy that we see a lot. Like if you think about what I think is that when you now become from a startup to what is it then? The corporation, right? Which has its procedures and 5 levels of leadership, like top meat, owners, board members, all that kind of stuff. Then I haven't understand. It seems to me in a way that the mindset also changes and you become like a machine, but you forget how you got there, because you got there by innovating and thinking outside the box, making bold decisions. Now you become so risk averse that you don't do any decisions anymore, and you are like taking everything politically. As the career politicians, you don't have to make decisions because you're thinking long term. In long term, you don't take risks. So to me, it's interesting that even if you are in a less riskier environment, why should your mindset change? It shouldn't. You should be still thinking outside the box as like in the beginning, because the world you're living is still the same. It's just you get too stable and too comfortable, like a human nature makes us more comfort, and like the really huge companies, they are just more in comfort zone, and now we know where the comfort zone leads. It leads into not having doesn't lead you to make free decisions. It leads you to be micromanaged and not an independent thinker, so to say.
I agree. Of course, there is also a dichotomy because the more people you have, people have different interests, emotions, and you have to regulate somehow our connections. We have, 1,000 years ago, maybe we had 100,000 people living in Estonia. Now we have more than a million. Definitely more than a million have more complex relations. So we have more complex regulations because we want to survive in this environment. So the same with a big corporation. If you have 10 different types of production, But as a startup, you started from one. Definitely, you need more regulations, you need more agreements. But dichotomy is there that you never have to lose this emotional desire to develop and adapt. That's true. And how to find the balance? Okay, we also in Combat Ready see now we are so much bigger. We need certain agreements, we need certain readbacks, we need certain written procedures, which we probably didn't need 2 years ago. But if we are falling in love, creating new procedure, not thinking why we are doing it, I think that is the biggest risk. And when you think that, hey, I am ready, I need only to fine-tune a little bit. You never need a little bit to fine-tune, because like Tallinn will never be ready. The same we would like with a business. And I hope that Estonia have not lost, or at least will refine again, the same spirit that, hey, okay, we have achieved this famous important goal. We are now part of European Economical Society or Union. We are part of a strongest military alliance, NATO. Fine. We don't have any more occupational troops on our soil. Fine. But does it mean that we have solved every problem and now we can sit, relax in a chair and say, hey, we don't need to do anything else? I think then in a one generation we will be falling back. Sorry.
So if I think about my kind of internal character as a human, I guess I feel because you become successful, like a big corporation, it requires a long time success. It requires a lot of kind of successes on top of successes to achieve to become a big corporation. So the flexibility seems to be kind of going away, because if you're like your ego gets bigger and you should be now be even more basic, like in terms of foundational thinker. Like the further you get, the more successful you are, which means that the more stronger you should be basing your actions based on the basic principles. Like because it becomes exponentially harder because you have so many options now. You don't have the focus anymore because you have all the opportunities to do whatever you want. But in the beginning, you only have a one place, one direction. Now Estonia has so many options, and now it becomes much more harder to make those decisions. So running a huge corporation feels at the moment much harder because the complacency creeps in. You don't have to put yourself in danger anymore. You don't have to make those risky decisions. But at the same time, if you get too complacent, you will die out because you are too complacent. You're getting too comfortable.
Yep, and that's definitely again part of dichotomy. We wanted to be developed. We wanted to have a stability. We wanted to be on the highest level of human development and the living standard. But at the same time, if you just think it's for granted, it will never change. I don't need any more to push harder. It can disappear pretty fast, and we have seen, unfortunately, those examples in history in recent times, but also a long time ago. But when we now little bit return to our initial thing, our initial topic, 1992, and the first government of Mart Laar. As our economical prosperity started with a very bold, very risky decision of a financial reform, a monetary reform in 92. One interesting aspect was this ruble affair. What emotions or what ideas, when you were watching the movie or reading the book or analyzing this case, what ideas did you have in mind?
So let's get back to, I wrote down a note about the money reform because I had one last thing I wanted to talk about. The last thing, what I think which it's kind of unique, like being here in Estonia, why this country hasn't been like, why we have, because we have developed to a kind of like a big corporation from the point of startup where we were like in the beginning and where we are now, right? But what has been
in 33 years, yes.
Yeah. So what's the kind of on this countryside, why it has been the case where we haven't, I don't know, I would say failed so big, in my opinion, is that we have always had the enemy next door, regardless of that. Because if you become a huge company, right, you have so much power that you don't care anymore. But we will never get to that position, which means that we will never kind of get complacent because the enemy is active, because enemy is making it very clear to us as well that they are active. So which kind of means that we will never get in a situation where we can get complacent. At least that seems to be the case at the moment, because the enemy seems to be very clearly reminding that, hey, I'm still the danger to you.
I agree that from the security field, our eastern neighbor has reminded its existence several times. So in 94, when they got out from Estonia, it was a kind of a relax, but at the same time, all these tensions to a certain level remain. Now, relatively peaceful period came in 2004 when Estonia joined NATO. Hey, we are now part of the big boys club. We don't need, to be worried anymore. Boom, in 2008, Georgia, and for us it was definitely a wake-up call. Hey, wait a minute, it is not over. So maybe for majority of the people, the bigger wake-up call was a Crimea in 2014, and then of course a full-scale invasion 22. But you are right, we never had several decades of that a forgetting, hey, it's not relevant anymore. Maybe we had some years of a relatively calm and peaceful period, but it was maximum 5, 6, 7 years, and then the reminder came again. So I agree, we definitely, at least from security point of view, we always had to be alert, or at least not completely shut down this opportunity or possibility that something could happen. While some bigger countries far away until 2001, when those terrorist attacks occurred, maybe we're thinking, hey, the world is a peaceful place now and forever, which was not the case.
Yeah, so lucky to have an enemy. It doesn't make you complacent and get sleepy, so to say. But let's get to the money reform then. So the money reform, as I understood, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, so pretty much they had a 70-ton worth of papers in a basement somewhere, and it was in rubles. So now, as you have a new country, they had to either give that back to the Russia or the Soviet Union, or whatever.
At this time, already Russian Federation. Yes.
Yeah, so rather Russian Federation, and now. So maybe just give us a small brief, just to help us understand what's the situation they were in specifically. What was going on?
Situation was actually pretty simple. So Estonia decided to go to the new currency, Eesti kroon, Estonian crown, and exchange Soviet rubles, which were in use before June 1992. And as you mentioned, the value of those Russian rubles were actually falling every day, I think even in hours. And you had tens of tons, more or less, very soon to be worthless money. By the agreement between Estonia and Russia, Russia had to organize and compensate and to get those rubles back. But of course, Russia was not very much interested to be fast enough, to hurry up.
Okay, so they were delaying.
They were delaying, and actually, it was definitely not on their priority list. But for us, it was on a priority list due to the very simple reason. Every day we are losing money, and now we have to do something with this very soon worthless thing. And you are facing a coming winter, which means your budget is empty, which means you need to have investment how to overlive, how to pay pensions, how to buy some strategic goods for the winter. And the Estonian government, close circle of Estonian government to be correct, decided to innovate and adapt. Okay, if the owner of this money, the Russian Federation, doesn't care and delaying the action, we will be a default aggressor. We will find the buyer. And the Estonian government decided that they will ask for help for some businessmen who will have different connections. And would they be able to organize several planes out of Estonia loaded with this money and to fly to the buyer? And the buyer happened to be Chechenian rebels at this time, who had, like you said, common enemy with us, because we were not so naive that we're hoping, hey, now we will be friends with Russian Federation forever. Chechenian rebels were ready to pay billions of US dollars because they needed rubles. We needed dollars, and we innovated and adapted. And those planes flew out. Was very risky maneuver. If they would be caught, probably that will be the huge scandal, but it was successful on both ways. The rubles flew out and the dollars flew in, and Estonia overlived the first very hard winter when Estonia had already their own currency. So the first test was passed.
Mm-hmm. So desperate times need desperate measures. And it's kind of just having those risky moves, just having the balls to take, because what they could just do nothing. They could let that, like, hey, we have this agreement, they will come, blah, 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 and nothing, and they will just lose the value of that money. Yeah.
By the end of the day, if we would delay the action and delay the action and delay the action, I think we would have been in the situation where we would have the basement of Estonian bank full of worthless paper, which you need to recycle, which would be even bigger burden for our budget. From the financial point of view, that would be the final result for sure.
So it's just like, as I'm saying, like we have a problem. The winter is coming. We have zero resources. But so what do we have? Then someone says, hey, remember we have those tons of money that our previous partners, so to say, didn't want to exchange back. So, hey, that's something what we have. We also have this option. We possibly have this option. We also have that option. We have also that option. We have tried this one, and this one, most likely. Now, we have nothing to do. We either die during the winter in some ways or forms, and we will make this a very terrible winter, and that's now what that will help is that will help the enemy to come and occupy us back, because then the people will be in bad shape. There's a chance, because at that time the military was still in the country, right? Yep. So like you have those things, like you have nothing really to lose. You just have only bad options. You just go for it and see what happens. And luckily they were able to like pull it off. Like that should be a movie. Like how Estonian government got like made, or with all those things. It should be a Hollywood movie, I would say.
Yeah, actually, you're very much right. I never thought that would be a great movie based on the true story. And there is also a bitter part of it, at least from my point of view, where personal egos played an unpleasant role. The first government, the Prime Minister Mart Laar, knew very well what he's taking a risk of. Because, and he knew that if that will come out, it will be, if not complete, but for a certain period, that will be the death of a political career. But he didn't care. And that's why I actually admire his bravery in this situation. The non-written agreement between the people who knew not even the whole government actually knew. Not all the ministers knew. It was very close circle. They agreed that it will not be revealed before the final Russian soldier is leaving the country, because in July 94, the agreement was already that the last soldier will be leaving 31st of August. But because the political tensions, we probably forgot where we're coming from. We probably forgot the hard times. Now this rivalry and cover and move was not working anymore. So the political tensions were so high that one of the political parties, oppositional parties, got the information that the rubles are actually out of the country already. And they asked Prime Minister openly on the press conference, where are those money? And Mart Laar, from the political point of view, made a very wrong decision. He lied. He said the money is still in the basement of the Estonian bank, but the money was already out. And it came out in September, so a month after the Russian troops left. Of course, it was scandal. The Prime Minister took responsibility, said it was my decision to lie. I'm sorry, I'm stepping back. And he stepped back. So actually losing his position as a Prime Minister, etc. But the money was used, the decision was made, and he didn't put himself to the first position, which I really admire. On the other hand, the investigation started because legally it was a case where you violated rules. It was this paragraph is not existing anymore in our law, but the official accusation or official investigation was started violating the rules of handling foreign currency. So that is a case for me where you are losing the bigger picture. So violating the procedures, not like taking a personal bribe, not personally earning something, because he never earned out of anything. He only took a risk. You are actually investigating the formal violation, forgetting the bigger pictures that, wait a minute, we managed to overlive. And 3 guys were accused and were dragged through 3 steps of court, 3 layers of court, up to Supreme Court, who finally had enough balls to say, hey, we are closing this case, full stop.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to be in a situation where you have actually pulled out a magic trick from a shitty hand at poker table, so to say, because you only had these options. And then someone comes in and tells you that, hey, you, even though that's the only way, like there's no other ways, and that's like a legitimate way how to kind of do it. Everyone understands the reasoning, but then there is a one nitpicker. No. That was not the procedure. Or whatever.
SOP said something else.
Yes. And yeah, it's crazy to... I can't even imagine being in the situation. And what do you think about your government or like the overall like hey, it's a very disappointed, bitter feeling, I would say, when you end up in a situation like that.
But hard times make strong men, like we say. Mm-hmm. So all of those 3 guys who were finally declared not guilty by Supreme Court, one is still playing a very significant part in Estonian business. Didn't give up. 2 guys, by the way, returned to the politics and even were members of the parliament and government for a certain period of time. But of course they were disappointed. Of course they were hurt. But you have 2 options. You can sit at home and whine, hey, the life was so unjust. Why they did it to me? Everyone else is guilty. They said, yeah, fine. I feel bad. It's definitely making me sad. But I would do the same again. This approach, one of them is actually expressed that yes, it was hard. Those 2 years devastated me, but I would do again the same. And that's really the attitude I like.
I like it as well. I like it. I think it's such a, like, it's a honorable, it's a respect type of thing. Like everyone will respect that. Everyone will respect you standing behind your words, not starting to push the blame on anyone. Like you take ownership, and that's how it is, and I would do it again because that's what we thought at that time was the best decisions. Now, yes, if I knew that and this, maybe I would do a different decision, but I didn't, and that's what we did, and that's the result. Now, what I will do next is X, Y, Z, and that's a respectful way of how to handle those situations. And I think, yeah, that situation, like at that moment, it seems crazy, but I think that being like just trying to imagine yourself in that room making those decisions, it means that okay, that's the only thing what we can do. Who's in? Then you're there with some of your boys, right? Like, because it wasn't kind of like they didn't play any political games, which was awesome at that time, because they were just like, as I said, 4 farmers came together. We understand what we need to do. We want to build a farm together that will enables the food for everyone, and there is no other options. We will live or die, it doesn't matter. Let's go with this one and let's see what happens. Which is also interesting to me now, if you mentioned, and I would say that that's the case there, and seems to me like a very logical way how to approach it. I would love to see guys like that in politics in general, or in every leadership position, doesn't matter where. It's if you can respect a person, like that's where everything starts. So the second thing what I started thinking about is the getting troops out of the country. That's one of the next decisions they had to make, right? Like, what is your leverage? Like, how do you negotiate? I have no clue. Like, what would be okay? Well, like, hey, like the other side has everything. They're inside of your country. What is your leverage? What can you do if they say no? No, I don't care. What were some of the things that they could pull? What do you know about that thing?
Yeah, those famous negotiations, which actually started immediately after Estonia redeclared independence, restored independence in August 91. So in 92 already we started to discuss, hey guys, it's time to leave now. And in the beginning, Russia said, yes, we can discuss it, but we will be moving out in at least 10 years. So it would be last by the initial idea of Russian Federation until 2002. In 2000, Putin was already in power, and we can only imagine, would the Russian troops move out by 2002? Definitely no.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also pretty clear for Estonia, that every month we are losing, every month, means that it might never happen, and we don't have enough power to push them out of the country. So what is the first law of combat? Cover and move. Who is going to support our idea to get them out? And also we're using the right momentum. Russian troops were moving out at this time from East Germany, and they already left Czechoslovakia.
So why did they start moving out from there? What was
because that was
yeah,
that was a part of the agreement with those countries, and Soviet Union actually was financially not capable anymore to sustain it. Ronald Reagan, who pushed the Soviet Union into this mysterious arms race, managed to collapse Soviet Union from the economical perspective. War in Afghanistan, it was definitely the last nail in the coffin of Soviet Union, because you just couldn't sustain it. The oil prices fell so low that this economy, which was based only on exploitation on raw resources, just collapsed. And when European countries and the United States said, hey man, now it's time to leave, Soviet Union realized, hey, the Soviet bloc is collapsed, we are leaving Europe. But the former Soviet republics was emotionally different. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania never been for Russia the same like Poland, Hungary, or Czechoslovakia. They were satellite states, but still states. We are for them like a emotionally former territory. Wait a minute, what do you mean we're going to move out? But we managed to sell the idea for our Western partners. No, we're in the same situation. And as a good salesman, like you said, we found this cover and move. We can support you, you can support us, we will benefit together in building a new security structure. And it was a very, very wise from the diplomacy point of view. But what experience can have 26-year-old Jüri Luik as a minister during this time, making a poker face during the negotiation? I don't know. I really don't know, but definitely he was successful, and the Russian generals were just losing the momentum. They just were like giving away step by step. Now, Estonian government later was accused very much, and I think it's very easy to accuse someone, hey, you didn't do the ideal deal. The deal, or part of the deal in July Agreement 94 was that retired staff of Soviet army can stay in Estonia. The government of Mart Laar and the president Lennart Meri was like close to be accused of high treason. Hey, you left the former military officers to stay in our country. If I have only several weeks to decide to agree or not, but that is a deal which is supported by our Western allies as well. Hey guys, not push too far. And you let thousands of retired military personnel to stay, but you get active troops out. Would you agree with this deal? It's easy to discuss now, 30 years later. Oh, I would do this, I would do that. But you are operating in this information environment. You don't know how far you can go with pushing your ideas, where you have to be flexible to adjust to your your adversary requirements as well. But that was a deal. That was a price. They stayed, of course, creating political tensions, creating instability, but we didn't have to accept them as citizens, which was also a win. Okay, you can stay, you can live here, but you cannot become Estonian citizens. You cannot vote on our parliamentary elections. You cannot influence our politics, but you can live here if you want. So that was a price of the agreement. And again, Mart Laar was heavily criticized by opposition parties that he almost sold Estonia, but the opposition parties actually never proposed anything else. Okay, how you would deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, not black and white, again, dichotomy.
How many of them were like actual Estonians? Is there any, or what's the number? Like you said 6,000 or?
You mean those retired personnel of the state? Retired. It was almost non-Estonians. Of course, it was former Russian citizens or former Soviet citizens who could stay in Estonia. It was unfortunately thousands of them. But all active troops left 31st of August. Of course, you are leaving so-called fifth column, and definitely some people were involved with Russian intelligence services, etc. But still, you had active troops out. And when you had active troops out, you had possibility to continue talks how to join European institutions, because who from European Union or NATO would even think about taking Estonia as a part of the club when you still have active troops in your country? That's what happened with Ukraine.
So it's like we need to achieve the minimum viable. What is it?
Yes.
Minimum
viable plan.
No. I mean, minimum viable plan, but also minimum viable requirements. Requirements for the tender, right? Oh, hey, let's compete to that tender. Okay, how can we achieve this minimum viable? Like, because if we don't have it, it's 0. We need at least 5 points to get a pass, right? So does this give us 5 points? All right, it gives us 5 points. Good to go. We will deal with that problem later.
Exactly, and that's what I love, because I think one of the big differences between the politics then and decision making, I mean in politics then and now, that high level politicians were thinking less about the image in social media or mass media. So if I believe in my idea, I think it's good to go. I think it's a necessary. I will do it. I will deal with this public image later. Now, seems to me, and I don't have a scientific research, but based on observations, before decision, significant part of decision makers start to think, okay, how it looks like, how it will affect my popularity, will I be winning next time again? In 1992, 1994, even the thought, will I win the next elections? It was something so far away. You were not thinking, I'm here in this moment. I have a crisis now. I need to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
And probably it gave actually more freedom because you were disciplined. I need to solve it now. I don't have time to postpone it. So that's where discipline actually gives you freedom, because if you are disciplined, I know what I need to do. I do it in this priority list, following this priority list. It gives me more freedom because I'm not depending on anyone.
I say
depend
it's
only on my decision.
It's a positive time pressure. That's sometimes where the positive time pressure can be positive, because it makes you make decisions, because otherwise you will die.
I don't know, does Minister of Defense in this time, Jüri Luik, or Prime Minister Mart Laar will agree with you that it was a positive time pressure during negotiations with Russian army. But now,
it seems
30 years later, we can see, it was.
So, and to me, like you touched the aspect of social media. I think I think that there are I would say most of the people in the government are, I would think, at least I hope as well, are actually thinking like those dudes back then. Now, what social media is able to do and convince you, because it's such a easily accessible, is that you can paint a wrong narrative or a not simple, clear and concise narrative as accurately as possible. Because now, as there is a lot of information coming in, like how many ways how you can interpret one freaking sentence? 10 different ways, right? Now, if you think about like how many opinionated ways you could actually talk these days about that cash deal, what those guys did at that time. Right. I mean, there's like 100 million ways how to kind of do it. So there's so much information that can be painted also in a specific way. And that also makes it difficult to understand what is actually going on. Because if you go there and speak with politicians or ministers or like in person, they are like smart people talking reasonable stuff. They are not like stupid. They understand why they're doing it. But now there is also an aspect. There's always like that. A few bad actors will ruin it for everyone else. That's how the world works, right? There is a new rule. Yeah. Now we think that everyone is like that. The bad news sell better. Every politician. 2 guys can ruin it for everyone. 1 guy can ruin it for everyone. Everyone is a strategic soldier. Like one Estonian does a bad thing in Afghanistan, that's done.
Yeah, I agree with you that the strategic soldier, that is a very good description of this time. So you could influence a lot as a single person this time, not even being a member of government, but I know the same people who actually were involved in this money exchange deal, which actually a free businessman, they influenced a lot our future history at this time. Even they were just people who were asked, hey, can you support us? You are in a transportation business. Is it possible to find the solution? They said, yes, fine, it is possible. So you could play in those turbulent times a significant role, not even being a part of the top political management.
So yeah, that's how it like looks or sounds to me. Like the country was run by ambitious businessmen who were not driven by the numbers, who were driven by the mission. Because if you get so driven by the numbers, hey, let's take this money and put it in a back pockets, because then we can make the most money. Because there's so many ways how to make more money. like in short term. Like, hey, I'm 50 now. I have only 10, 15, 20, 30 years to live. I have now opportunity to get to my bank account 50 million. I could have 500 million maybe in 70 or 80 years, but I will not see that anyways. So now, which one do you choose? Do you grab it for you? And that will make sure pretty much that, yeah, there will be a scandal, there will be something, but nobody will know, but you know. And you know, and your close friends know, some people know. So it's more of a having those leaders who have the right values and who are like willing to kind of sacrifice their own good in front of the team. So that's why when we talk about leadership loop, and that's what Jaakko talks about a lot, and I love that, is that yes, the first kind of thing to consider always is time. Like, time dictates a lot, because if you have 1 minute to make a decision, it's better to just make a decision. It doesn't matter which one it is. It gives you more. You can get the ball rolling. Now the second aspect, what you should be considering is the cover move, and how you should be considering is that, are we covering and moving for one another, or am I thinking about me or the team? And if I'm thinking about me, it's a wrong decision automatically. It has to be beneficial for the team and the mission. And if that answer is no, then
I agree, because those three guys, those three businessmen who actually helped to implement this plan, if they would want just in those wild days to steal part of this money, come on, they had tons of options to say, hey, it just disappeared. How can you prove it? You cannot go to suit them to the court because nobody knew about the case. The case was confidential. So everyone relied on each other's word, being, okay, I promised you something. And all the parties took a huge risk, but they kept the mission like the primary goal. And that was the excellent example. But if I can ask, when you watch this movie, what was maybe two takeaways, the most important takeaways for you?
Yeah, I mean, what I liked, I think number one is that true leadership exists even in politics in that sense, but it doesn't and it kind of reinforces to me that what we do is right, and it reinforces me, if you do the right things for the right reason, you will eventually win. It doesn't matter what everyone else does around you. If you have the right if your heart is in the right place and you're willing to obviously do the work, you will succeed. And that's I think number one for me, that it reinforces me that there is that kind of thing exists in the world. And secondly, I think making bold moves, and it reinforces all of the stuff what we teach. Like that you have to be default aggressive, you don't have all the information all the time, you have to make decisions, you have to start doing iterative decision making, one step at a time, start moving, think about the team, you have to make hard decisions, you have to have hard conversations, you never know what's going to be next, but you're moving. If you keep humble, you will be able to see in which direction you have to adapt. If you stay disciplined, you will get your freedom. If you took ownership of things, that will also help you move forward in the right direction. Blaming whoever doesn't stand a chance against the person who takes ownership. Clearly, the other person who's blaming, they are just losing. And I love that part when Jaakko talks about that. You keep gossiping, I keep working. You keep blaming, I keep working. You keep, I don't know, pointing fingers, I keep working. And in the end, you will lose and I will win. Or something along those lines. I love that video, what he's saying, like about those. And that's what it kind of reinforces me. Like, that's what it is. That's what I loved about this movie. That's what I loved about that moment. And I like it. It's part of Estonian history. And I'm really proud and like total respect. I didn't understand that he truly was there because I just know him from travel. Like he's a world traveler, right? But that he had that kind of background. But as he had that kind of a background, now I understand why he is successful in life. Why he has traveled the world, because he has the mindset. He had the balls to make those decisions. And that just translates into everything what he's done, I assume. And yeah, I mean, only respect to those guys and what they were able to do.
Yeah, Tiit, who you mentioned, who is one of the main owners of a Go Group, which is a big transportation and etc. Company. He was a personal advisor of Mart Laar during this time. He was one of the guys behind who managed to exchange those rubles and took a stand. Was not afraid about, okay, if you want to prosecute me, fine, but I still would do the same because I believe in this mission. And now, in some way, we became a part of elite club. I mean, Estonia. We are part of the most developed organizations. We are part of elite security club, NATO, etc. And when we teach about how to become elite, and I started to think, pick up a talent. We definitely pick up the talent in 91, 92, because those people had the right mindset. And we were lucky enough that they are strong enough with the right mindset. So they went through the hardest time and became the part of the team. Now, definitely they had to train as they fight because they had a 10% of the theory. They looked around the world. Okay, someone has demonstrated us it is possible. The same German example. Oh, we had a demonstration. Fine. But now we have to practice. Now we have to try it. Hey, will it really be the same with us? So this principle definitely worked. Train as you fight. And they worked in a real environment because every day was a training in a real environment. I remember as a young police officer, I joined 1996. But you had to be in the real environment training every day because it was wild. It was awful in certain aspects. But at the same time, it was so real. Every day you were working, you actually had like a month of training with one day because you were in so many different situations. And now those people who actually were running the show, I mean the Mart Laar first government, 92, 94, they definitely understood the training never stops. Because, okay, you solved this problem, but the next problem has appeared. How close actually Estonia was getting into the terrible situation where we would have a Narva autonomy in 93. Russian troops were in, referendum was ongoing, Estonia didn't have enough power, and the only thing we need to be smart, how to handle the situation. So all four aspects, talent, train as you fight, real environment, training never stops. And I have to say, those principles work. Otherwise, we wouldn't be an elite club today.
I totally agree. So, and what they had is that what we say also in the very end is like you have to have winner's mindset plus strong relationships plus purposeful continuous training, and that equals combat ready pretty much. You're ready for your battles, right? So that's what we were. And now what got me thinking, which is a new thought, that's why I love speaking with people. It brings out new thoughts. So about the 10%, 25, 65. So 10% theory, 25% demonstration, 65% practice. It is a theory from a U.S. Army instructor manual from 1953, which kind of describes
54, yes.
Or 54, which describes the idea how troops or how skills or soldier skills are taught or implemented to soldiers. So 10% theory, 25% someone demonstrates it to you, visualize it to you, how does it visually look like. You have someone who's an example, and then you eventually have to go and practice. Now, you said that like they were like they had that train as you fight thing. So what I come into is that like if you don't have a theory, if you don't have anyone to look towards who is demonstrating the things that you want, then the only way is to just start practicing. Now, if you start practicing, maybe you find someone who you still don't have a theory, but you have someone to look up who has achieved the same goal. Then you go and ask those guys, hey, you seem to be a demonstrator. You have seemed to be achieving those goals, what I would like to achieve as well. How did you do it? Then you get a little bit of theory based on what he said, but maybe he didn't refine the theory. He just didn't think about it. He has just gone through life doing the right things, but he didn't know the theory. Now, you get that information, you can go and have to practice. And then you understand, and maybe you get to the same place what he told you and where you wanted to go. Now, if you have the theory, you have the demonstrators, you still have to go and practice. Doesn't matter which thing it is, the most important part is practice. It just makes it simpler if you understand the theory, you're able to see a person who has demonstrated it, then you actually still have to go and practice, because otherwise it's just an idea on a paper, theory on a paper. So if you're in a situation like they were, like who knows how to build up this startup, Estonia? Like nobody has the clue. All right, let's start practicing. And then they started learning, okay, some things like work, some things don't. They became some sort of a demonstrators, but I'm quite sure that they didn't write down the theory of how they did it. They didn't think through, because that's a part which is really difficult to do. But now what huge organizations are capable of doing is that the first leaders, they actually write down, like, I don't know, the First Amendment, they write down their principles, they write down how they do it. That's what Chaco did. He was also in Iraq. They didn't also know what the 4 laws were. He was just doing it. They didn't teach it to his own unit at that time. Now, what he was able to do, when he got back, he was told and asked that, hey, go and teach what you did because you were so successful to other troops. Now, he had to take a step back and start thinking, hey, what the heck did we do? And why did those things even work? So that's where the place where he came and come up with the theory. And then obviously he understood that, hey, that theory is written in every book of military book, but it's just simpler version of that, because he was a simple man. He only knows simple words, and that's what he simply wrote down to make it easily understandable for their troops, to the SEAL teams to teach, which kind of again showcases me that through the practice, he came up with the same theory what a lot of other theorists have written down. So if you're in a situation where you have no theory, that's not a problem. If you're doing the right things, if you're able to adjust based on the feedback, if you're open-minded, if you're willing to make decisions, if you're willing to fail, you will eventually learn, and you will be demonstrator, which means that demonstrator is seen by other people. Now, there is an indication if you're successful. They will come towards you and ask you how you did it. Now, if they come and ask you, you can tell it each person one by one, or you can write the book, which means that you have to put down the theory, and now there's a theory of how you did it and how you became successful. So I think that's interesting to see that sometimes you can have a lot of theories, but all you need to do is start practicing. And eventually you will become a demonstrator, because if you're capable of learning and adjusting, and then people will come ask, you have to write those things down. So I wish it would be really interesting to see, like, some of those successful politicians who are considered to be like doing politics through value and setting the mission first. If they wrote a leadership manual of decision making and how they made it and come up with their theory, how that work should be done, that would be an interesting book. It would most likely speak the same stuff what extreme ownership does, but it would be interesting to see how they would write it down, because I think that there is, I don't know, I haven't actually just gotten into it, but what's the theory behind doing a great job at politics? I have no idea what that is. I have never read a book, but is there a manual that teaches you how to do politics in the right way? Like there is a manual for leadership in the military.
I actually think that the memoirs of high-level politicians, and we've been talking about Mart Laar so much time today. So when I've read his books or books about him, like his advisor Kalle Muuli and other people who have wrote it from this time, actually they describes exactly the same principles. In Mart Laar book, where he describes his second government, also very turbulent times, 99 to 2002, and he had a different problems, and he said, you have to pick your battles. You can't invest your time equally, you have to prioritize. So actually every example he wrote, every political decision he justified, explained. He was actually following that, don't blame others, think what you can do and pick your battles. Think where you invest your energy. So the best way we can use him as a demonstrator. Hey, based on this theory, I did those things. You don't have to follow the same thing, but please think, look, observe. Maybe you can find something valuable. So as a conclusion, I would say that I consider memoirs about those times and his personal memoirs, it's kind of a leadership book, but it's just longer. It's not simplified. It has many details, but it's possible to extract exactly the same things. And maybe during our trainings, we just can, depending on the audience, to bring certain examples from this time as a demonstration, as an explanation that, hey, we've been through this. 30 years ago, as a nation, as a society, we've been in this situation. And because we are not blaming other societies, not pointing fingers on others, that someone else has to do our job. Maybe that's why we became successful. Not waiting for mercy that, hey, someone has to come and help us, because life has been so unjust against us during the last 200 years.
So, like, that's an interesting question I have. What's the training of a politician? Is there like there's some university stuff, right? Where you can go and learn politics or something, or no?
You can learn political science, you can learn sociology, etc. But to be honest, I've never heard that someone has been successful to be graduated from university as politicians. I never heard. From political science is fine, but you still need to have some real environment experience. Mart Laar was a history teacher. He was active in his life, so he achieved something. Tiit Pruuli was successful businessman already. So they didn't need politics to be a way of income. It was a possibility to achieve the mission. It was possibility to achieve something bigger. And I actually value much more people who have their experience in some practical field and then go and try to implement it into this political hemisphere.
So the training was those fields?
Real life.
Real life, yes.
Yeah. Yes, real life was providing a lot of training. Ronald Reagan, one of the most successful persons in Cold War time, as we know, very successful actor in his field. But he used, okay, I'm a good actor. It means people look on me. I can use my skill to put my ideas into the forms, into the words people would like to follow. Or other many examples from different fields. Andrus Ansip was actually educated in chemistry. So again, every one of them had something like a real hands-on thing as well. So that's why I more believe into the people who have achieved something in a practical field and then went into the politics, not vice versa.
There should be our leadership module there. Now I know that, but that's like, why shouldn't it be there? Like, give me one good idea why it should be there. If you become a minister, if you become a politician, if you become anyone in a government organization, what would be the shortfall? I see zero. It should be there. Like in general, like there has to be a leadership training. Like, what's the place where, what's the institute or what's the educational system from zero to wherever, from the first grade until university?
Like a PhD in university.
Like there should be, like in all of those steps, there should be teaching how to think, not what to think.
Sure. But it's not connected with a particular particular faculty. So it's necessary for medical doctors, it's necessary for teachers in mathematics, it's necessary for lawyers, it's necessary for political science. But actually this skill is necessary for every aspect of life. It doesn't matter, are you going to run the country, or you're going to run the chemical shop, or you're going to be engineer in a metal construction. Actually, you need this skill. And now when you are implementing those skills in your profile, in your everyday job, I don't see any obstacle why you cannot implement them on the political level if you ever decide to go there, if you have interest to go there.
Yeah, it's a foundation of everything, pretty much.
It's a foundation of everything.
And also, like same way, like everyone should, like it, and it should be simplified. It is complicated, but the only way how to do complicated things is to simplify it first, and then start getting more complex and seeing how those simple principles first get you towards looking the right direction, rather than having a lot of complicated stuff which will never lead you to look at the right direction because it's too complicated. I like the saying, because at the moment, I mean, leadership is taught through practice of life. Like there is no way you can't learn. Like everyone will be learning it. Like they see it. It's rather that is it the most optimal way that is simply understood, because everyone leads their life somewhere. Everyone leads the people around them somewhere. It's just that there is no maybe conscious decisions behind some of the things. You just go through it without having the understanding of, hey, if I do this, this will actually give me a better chance of getting better results. So definitely it should be part of a more systematically, it should be part of everyone's educational system.
Yeah, I totally agree. And of course, in military or paramilitary studies like, I don't know, police, rescue, etc., it's a little bit easier because those people are facing challenging leadership problems every day in their life. But it doesn't mean that being a nurse in hospital, you are not seeing those same leadership issues. Of course you see, because every decision what you have to make in an emergency department of a hospital, actually someone's life is depending on it. So what else can be more leadership issue? It is a leadership decision. Which patient I took first? And
Yeah, to me, it's like they don't only have a challenging leadership environment. They have a challenging communication environment. They have complicated plans, complicated tenders, complicated tasks to achieve. They have long-term, short-term. That like military represents life. Now,
sure.
What's the main difference is that they have time to experiment because they have peacetime. They have like this break where they are able to learn. It's like long debriefs and lesson learned. Lessons identified, lesson learned. Now, what you do in between wars will depend the outcome of your readiness for the next battle. So in life, it's like you don't get that so much time. You just get you fucked up today, tomorrow comes in and you're still in war, you're still in trenches. Because in the wartime, wins most of the time, or like in the beginning, the preparation, like the better prepared you are, you can already destroy the enemy. Like if they are not prepared at all, you just walk into the park like Germans did with some of the countries. They just drove into it, and that's it. So they were not prepared at all, which means that it's all about the preparation. And now, if you have that peacetime again, you have the opportunity to prepare. That's what Finland have done for 100 and whatever years. They have never stopped preparing. That's why they have bridges. That's why they have under every building they have a cellar where people can go if something goes on. They have mountains. They have they have invested still into the same defense for 105 years. It's about preparation, and it will be so difficult to fight with them.
Sure, but the most important they have that during these decades they have invested into creating a mindset, a right mindset. Suomen sisu, the Finnish inside. We will fight. And I'm really lucky that in last 30 years I see the mindset improvement here as well. A lot of thanks, of course, to the reserve army system, to our nation development in general. But I see that we are going towards the right mindset. And again, we have hard times now. We have dangerous times, to be honest. But they create a stronger people. And I think the Martlar example is a very good example that even in a much more harder times they had 30 years ago, it was possible to start to create positive mindset. We can manage. We will never surrender. We will fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's also awesome. Like it seems to some people and in some areas and to us as well, because in our lifetime, like it could be like in my lifetime, this could be like the most dangerous area, or at least that's what I'm thinking. We actually have no accurate understanding of, maybe there was a time which was much more dangerous. But now if you look throughout the history, like which situation was worse, like significantly more worse, like having Russian troops in here and we are not being independent, or now? There's no question. It's significantly better at the moment. So even if it will become like worse, it can't become as bad as it was then. At least being like the preparedness what we have now achieved is on a different level. We're part of NATO, we are part of EU, we are part of XYZ, everything, and everyone is preparing. And obviously, if you want to avoid war, you have to be prepared for war, right? That's the saying.
Civi pacem para bellum, like ancient Romans already were saying.
They obviously understood. They had the theory, they had the demonstrators, they had the experience. So that's what all they had.
3,000 years ago, yes, already.
So that's what they put it in a very simple way. So they hope that everyone now understands. They try to make it as simple as possible. But now, obviously, there are so many things you can interpret. And it's someone else's theory. It's not what I thought. So let's not follow that. Let's invent the bicycle ourselves. It's the ego thing, right?
Hey, you're actually very right. I never thought from this perspective. Being a lawyer, that the Roman law actually simplified in these Latin sentences. Actually, they took the whole theory and put it in a 1 or 2 sentence. Like the whole idea, like you just expressed, that we speak a lot about national defense or wider defense, laiapinne riigikaitse, like we say in Estonia, that actually it's calculated, it's narrowed down to 1 sentence. If you want the peace, prepare for the war. Deterrence. Civi pacem para bellum. Boom. So the whole theory of Estonian policy of deterrence, a global deterrence, total defense, actually narrows down to this 1 sentence coming 3,000 years ago. Or if you want to make a distinction between public law and the civil law, the public law which benefits the whole society, the civil law benefits 2 parties. Boom. And again, simple explanation in 1 Latin sentence. You are right. Romans 3,000 years ago managed to actually clarify the whole existence of a state in a couple of sentences.
Especially the small one, right?
Especially the war one, yes.
Yeah, it's and it's also interesting, like in terms of that specifically, what I wanted to say. So what were you saying? Romans? I lost my thought.
Romans managed in this short Latin language sentences, actually they describe the huge theory in 1 or 2 sentences.
I got it now. So what I came up with is that why there is so much to learn, in my opinion, from the military and vice versa, from civilian companies to military, is the principles are kind of like the same. Because what is the difference in terms of the military is that they have that moment of peace where they can refine and learn from the mistakes from the previous wars. Now, in the civilian, if you don't learn, then you will just go bankrupt and that's it. You will just lose the war. Now, what's going on in the civilian world is we can learn how to sustainably fight for decades and decades and decades, and what eventually makes you successful in war, where there is all the time this dynamic fighting going on, changes constantly. So there is a lot to learn from the civilian about actually time, operative decision making, because you're constantly in war. There's no peacetime in business. But they don't have the time to refine those training methods. And now military, as it's preparing, I'm kind of preparing and trying to make future business workers based on the previous mistakes of what the businesses have done wrong. That's what military kind of is. We have a war, we win or we lose. Now, from those mistakes we made, we want to teach them to the future soldiers, and we have more time to prepare them for the next war. So we have more time to actually learn from them and identify those things. Now, obviously, all of that is dichotomy as well, but that's why some of the leadership tools are so refined, and that's why they work, because there has been a lot of time to revise and adjust and make it better and make it better and make it better. So that's why the MDMP, the TLP, the troop leading procedures, that's why they work. Because there is a time where and I think another thing, because if you have to start teaching something, then you actually start learning what it's all about, what's the whys behind the words. And that's what they have to be able to do a lot. And it's one company learning from their own mistakes simultaneously as there is a war. So you have to have a peacetime unit who is mapping out all the mistakes in a company, who is at the same time starting to train your future soldiers who will not do the same mistakes as you are making at the moment in real time. So interesting that there is shit to learn, and there is a lot more maybe that we can consider to learn from the businesses about how to tactically fight the war than from the actual units that are fighting in a war. Because I would say that there is more to learn how to prepare for war and planning and tools what they've created from the military. Because in terms of time, yes, military conflicts are more intense, the consequences are more bigger, but civilian companies have more tactical experience because they are constantly in war. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Yes, I totally agree that they more has used train as you fight principle, because they are really two principles actually: real environment and train as you fight, because that's they need to do constantly.
Mm-hmm.
During lessons, I'm a teacher also of national defense in a high school, and I brought my students not to the military unit, but I brought them to the rescue unit, Lilleküla Rescue Fire Department. Because this department 16 times per day has emergency calls. And it means every burning apartment, every burning house, they actually go into the real environment for, because those 6 guys who are arriving, the first car, with the water, with they know that every situation is different. Every time I go into the burning house to save someone, I'm actually in a real situation. I know it might go very wrong. And I have to adapt, because the fire is not asking me, have I been trained enough, etc. It's simple. It's black and white. You may win, you may lose. And who is better prepared to make hard decisions? Are our young officers who are training in a not so much realistic environment, which is understandable, or those firefighters who have to follow every day 4 laws of combat? Because when I'm going into the burning house, I need to have my back covered. I need to have good relations with this person. And I definitely need to prioritize if I have to save 3 people from there. I cannot grab them all at the same time. So the same with the civilian companies. It doesn't mean that you can train battlefield principles only on battlefield. You might train them in life. And the simplifying, when you mentioned this manual from 1954, I have to say that as a lecturer of law of military academy, I've never read better pedagogical material, not in any university I've studied, because it's simple, it's effective, and it's proven in life. So let's not try to make things complicated. And coming back to the initial topic of our today conversation, I think one of the reasons why it was successful journey in 92 by the first government of Mart Laar was exactly making those mission goals simple, that everyone understood. If we are not doing them now, the possible outcome would be like this. The consequences will be like this. Do you want the consequences? No? Hey, then we have to avoid them by simple plan.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I have to run. Sadly, life is calling. So thank you for today. I mean, awesome conversation. I learned a lot myself again, like always. So yeah, we will schedule a new time, and then we will continue on whatever we think we want to talk about.
Thank you, Remo.
All right.